it's Nancy, and believe it or not, I'm ready to do a flip through of my Shabby-Chic journal. So you've been watching me make this for quite a while. Let's give this a measure. So it's about 6.5 inches across, 9.5 inches long, and I know the spine is 2.5 inches. So I've made a closure here using a snippet, and I didn't pin this secondhand brooch. I stitched it down. So the part that's holding the belly band, or not belly band, the snippet together is these snaps. So there is a little room to add some more stuff. Let's take a look at this. So if you saw my video 2 days ago, I think, I was showing you how I was gluing this lace collage cover on using all kinds of vintage laces, hand stitched. I even stitched on these little pearls, and the spine, I've embroidered the word journal on it. Okay. Oh, I've got flip outs already flipping out. So this is a hidden hollow back spine, and I've got some vintage hand crocheted lace there, just sort of peeking over the edge. And the reason I like to do hidden hollow back spines is because they lay flat when you want to write in them. So let's get going. So like I said, the overall vibe is going to be vintage, shabby chic. There's tons of genuine ephemera in here. Let's just see if we can make this stay in the right place. Okay, and I'll point that out as we go through. And what else do I want to say about it? If you're seeing this video, it's been listed in my Etsy. Go take a look and see if this is something you would like to write your thoughts and feelings in. Okay, so here's something unusual. I almost never do a paper inside cover, but I got this Anna Griffin paper last Saturday. Oh, I'm gonna have green on that side. Last Saturday, and I thought, what looks more shabby chic than Anna Griffin paper? So that's what I went with this time. Generally, I like to use fabric as my inside cover, but this was getting kind of pudgy. As you can see, there's a lot of bulk going on here. So the first page is sheet music. This is some genuine hand crocheted lace. This is some piano roll music, and I've left the label on there, done some stitching around it. This is a vintage envelope. It was torn, so I embraced that torn look, inked it up and made a pocket. The inside is a little tag that I made during Tuesday, time to take out the trash, this past Tuesday. So it has some little piece cut off from a handkerchief, some vintage buttons, and a cutout for a book. Some tea-dyed scrapbook paper. I've got a little, I believe that's Tim Holtz. And this is a policy envelope that I made using some napkin and just some brown paper. So you can tuck something in there and then lock it up. And this could be moved anywhere in the book. This is a page from a genuine antique magazine, fashion magazine. I think it's the Delineator. This is a page, it's actually from the 60s, I believe, and it is an invoice for Royal Dalton china. This is torn from the edge of a handkerchief. This is tea-dyed copy paper. And I've just had this little rusty bulb pin here with a couple of pearl beads. I made this tea-dyed paper myself. This is created from a vintage card. And it just opens up like that for journaling. Add a little lace snippet and some lace along the bottom. This is, maybe you remember me doing this take out the trash one. So this was a stamp booklet. So I covered it with a tea-dyed paper, and I made this little pocket by fussy cutting this teacup. And on the back is, china cabinet. And these are genuine tickets. Kelly gave these to me. And I thought the pink was so pretty. And they are perforated so they can be torn off individually and used somewhere else. A bit of vintage lace. Here's another piece of vintage lace, and inside this is from a Edith Holden image. Just tuck it in there. This is actually a fabric envelope, and I have tucked it in here with a little safety pin, and here's a couple of little vintage, antique ephemera. So this is a little Bible verse, and this is a player's cigarette card with a miniature miniature portrait. Okay, there's that delineator. It was from 1905. And pinned on here is a tag that I made. Well, it's more like a journal card. So I used an index card, collaged on some different papers, and here I used a little report card. And I attached it with one of those interesting little paper clips that Alice gave me last week. And I just tied on some ribbon. Okay. There's another piece of that piano paper. This was an envelope that had a flower card in it. So this came from somebody's floral bouquet. And I've just tucked in a little journaling card and added an eyelet at the top and ran a little ribbon through the top. Some tea-dyed paper, and this is a fussy cut from a book I just decorated the bottom with. This is a vintage envelope from 1935. Here is a laundry receipt, and I've added some vintage lace to the back, and I made this little journaling card. Just tucks in there. This is a page from a book. Tea-dyed paper, and I added this pink tatting that I tore from the edge of a handkerchief. This is vintage ledger. Added this little paper collage here, front and back. And this tips out, and inside this little pocket that I made using eyelet lace, this is a just a card, but I added this little vintage prayer card from 1961, and this is Hail Mary written in French. So I've just sewed acetate on top of that. You can take the card out and add something else. I just thought it was very pretty. Tea-dyed paper, book page. Here I have a glassine envelope, and inside I've got some genuine stamps. There's a rose, there's a little girl in a little blue dress, and that really ornate clock. Back of that envelope. It's tea-dyed scrapbook paper, vintage lace, and vintage seam binding. I put this, I decoupaged on this napkin on the back of the tea-dyed paper. This is an old napkin, or sorry, an old envelope. And inside it is genuine ephemera. It says Reward of Merit presented to Agnes Gow, Mary Morgan teacher. And I did some stenciling here. This is an old envelope that I made on Tuesday. There's the other side of it. And this is an envelope placed on top of an envelope. This is an envelope made into a journal card. And I did some collaging there. But it was just too beautiful not to use. And it was from 1915. So I'm just going to tuck that back up in there. This is a book page about a historical costume. Look at this trim with the roses, golden red roses. This is stationery from a hotel in Albany, New York. This is trim torn from a handkerchief. I sewed that on this lace tea-dyed paper. Here's some trim that I have stitched onto this vintage stationery from a nursery from 1942. Here's some more trim. Isn't that gorgeous? It's almost like a silky embroidered. This is the other side of that envelope. Did some stenciling, added a lace snippet. This is the back of that decoupage. This is a handkerchief that I cut a piece from and wrapped it around the edge of the page just as, you know, a decorative element on the tea-dye paper. This is a piece of wallpaper, and I stitched on a doily. And inside the doily I have this card that I made using some old packaging and a little bit of collage. I think it can just tuck in there for some writing paper. And there's the back of that wallpaper. More tea-dyed paper with a fabric ruffle I sewed myself. And I did this page recently. And how I did this was I cut squares and rectangles of fabric, glued them down, and then I did some stitching around it. I really like how that turned out. This is another receipt, and I sewed it on a lace pocket. This is actually a button card, and the button card, I glued this image on top and then sewed some buttons on, added a little lace tabby thing. I like that image. So I call these altered button cards. I have a box of them, and I never use them. So here is the receipt, and you can see it's folded sort of askew, and that's because that's where the original fold was, and I didn't want to leave sort of a fragile part by moving the fold to a different place. Manuscript paper. This is a book from a book of Audubon birds. This is a envelope that I tea-dyed, and I turned it inside out so that the inside security pattern would be out. I put this little journal card in here. So this is paper and fabric and lace and an image. And on the outside of the, well, I've got this fussy cut. The outside I have several colors of embossed paper. Actually, this paper came from vintage envelopes that I was soaking the stamps off of. This is silk embroidery ribbon, and it's sewn into the signature, so it can be removed, or one end can be lengthened, or whatever you want to do with it. And that ties the envelope closed. This is fussy cut from a book page, and I tea dyed it and glued it down as a decorative element. Here we have some more tea dyed scrapbook paper. This is from a vintage birthday card. This is some tea dyed vintage trim, these cotton flowers. And I've stitched it onto this receipt from Wiggins Furs. So this is from 1945. She got, Mrs. Connery, got a black Persian lamb coat and muff and paid $325 for it. This is some vintage ledger. It had a little tear in it, so I used some vintage tape to tape it together. This tab I made with a genuine cigarette card from Will's Cigarettes. More tea dye paper. This is a book page that I tea dyed, and I covered the inside with this piano paper with the words, and fussy cut this lady out of a book. Tea dyed paper that I cut this from a vintage handkerchief. Here's a little tip out. So this piece of label from a scrapbook, I adhered to a piece of vintage ledger, and just to decorate it, I added this little cluster that I made, I want to say months ago, following Gail Agostinelli's tutorial. So it has piano paper, lace, book page, doily, and a stamped image. Here's a check that I stitched onto the edge of the fur shop, because it was just, that wide. I stitched this check onto the fur shop receipt and added some eyelet lace. There's birthday card. Here's some more hand crocheted lace. This was torn from a vintage handkerchief, and I stitched that on there. A receipt from, I don't know, but it's pink. Manuscript paper, music manuscript. These were pieces that I tore and fussy cut. This is manuscript that somebody wrote the music for something on. This is a vintage wedding invitation from 1941. And here this little piece came from a piece of piano music. This letter is from 1948. And inside I have a little booklet. I believe Camille made this for me. And it has all kinds of pastel colors in here. And I thought, oh, that is the epitome of shabby chic. So I thought I would include that. I will put that in later. This is also tuck spot, and I put this flower, dried flower, that I stuck between two pieces of acetate, and then I just stitched on a little piece of collage. I thought that was a fun thing. Here's another vintage correspondence. This side was pretty tore up, so I just stitched some vintage lace across the bottom. More tea-dyed paper. This book came from I believe it came from an encyclopedia. Here's the other side of that correspondence from a nursery in Bowmanville. Here is the rest of that manuscript page, and I made this lace pocket, so it looks like this fussy cut lady is kind of hiding behind a veil. And I put together this little pocket packet of ephemera. So here's a dance card. I believe it was from, I put the date on here somewhere, 1891, the dance card. This is a letter I think it was from 37. Yes, there it is. March 9th, 1937. And last but not least, got this little piece of stationery from this hotel in Kingston, and a postcard of these two ladies from 1905. So lots of vintage goodies in there, and just stowed away in here. There's the back of that pink. It was the Irving something. So I stitched on this piece of vintage lace to make a belly band, and inside the belly band I tucked this tag. So this is fabric that I stitched onto some card and added a little tab with a button, piece of crochet lace and some fabric. I'm just putting that fabric, the lace on top. This is a bag. This is a piece of vintage trim, and I pinned on this little brass heart. Here's some really old paper doily and a little picture, little carte de visite of these two little kids. And it just tucks right down there in that this ribbon piece. Inside the paper bag, there is a postcard printed in Elmira, New York. Some more vintage hanky lace, crochet lace on. This is a bank check, and I sewed on this antique lace. This came from a vintage crochet book, pattern book, piece of notebook, piece of music. I don't see a date, and I stenciled on some roses. 1964. Stenciled on a rose there. Here's the other side of that check. It was from 1915. And inside the other side of the bag, here's another postcard to Daisy from George. And I chose this one because it's purple, and it sort of goes with the pinky purpley bag, and then I've got some purple lace here. So sort of echoing some of that color from that page turn. Here's a collage, dictionary page, a paper doll that I cut out from a book, and some vintage paper doily. Again, vintage handkerchief lace that I tore off and stitched onto tea-dye paper. This is an envelope that I made on just this past Tuesday. This is a page from a book about type fonts, maybe. This is a fussy cut, more pinky purpley colors, sort of to go with that whole section. Here is this is more tea-dye paper, and this is an actual postcard from 1915, and I've tucked in this letter from 1937. It can be removed, torn up for collage. The blank, there's only 1/4 of this that's written on, so the rest could be, used for journaling. This was fussy cut from a book and tea-dyed. Got a little flip out here. This is a page from an old book, and I made a pocket out of that. And this is a little calling card. This is an envelope from 1949, and there's nothing in it, so you can tuck little things in there. Some embossed paper. This is a piece of stationery that is lacy and embossed. This is a book page. This is a genuine doily, piece piece of vintage linen that's embroidered and has some cut work. Another piece of correspondence from 1945. This is a book page that's been tea-dyed, and then I layered on some of this paper, made a little collage here with a fussy cut. There's the other edge of that correspondence with some vintage eyelet. This was a genuine envelope. I just made it a smaller envelope and added this. This was from a box of threads. This I fussy cut from a piece of scrapbook paper. And inside I've got this tag that I made. It's covered in this beautiful fabric. And then I've stitched on some lace and then this, this fussy cut piece of fabric. So it just goes right into the envelope. Here's a tag that I made, and it's fastened on with a paper clip, a genuine vintage paper clip. So this has got some wallpaper, some old receipt. This came from a little piece of mail. Here's some texture paste. I've got it all going on here. And I've just got it pinned on to the top of this tea-dyed scrapbook paper. Book from a page from a book about birds. This is an old letter. I think it was from 1926. And I just covered up, like the address is still there. I didn't want to completely hide it, but I covered up a great deal of it with this fussy cut rose that came from a vintage greeting card. I made this little tag envelope out of wallpaper and added, of course, some collage. And this is a page that I've covered with piano music, and it's got the words here. On the other side, this came from a book about botanicals. Some more lace from a handkerchief. This is a vintage ledger, and I've got a postcard from 1914, and there's actually 3 pockets here. So I've pinned on this little coin protector thing that has an embroidered flower inside it. This little label came from some music. So there's 2 lace pockets. Lots of space for writing in this one. And here I have this tag that I made using scraps of paper and a piece of an old vintage greeting card. This little journaling card that I made from a book image. And finally this little oval image that I cut from a greeting card. I thought that might be fun to put somewhere else. So I'll just tuck all this stuff in here. Here's some more of that botanical book. And in this pocket, this is from an old envelope from 1934. And I made a little pocket on the front with this image of birds. This is just a little journaling card that I've got slipped in there. And the back has some writing paper. This is another hunk of that envelope. And I've added this embroidered trim. And finally, I made this pocket out of a book page and a business envelope, a junk mail envelope. Just did a little bit of collaging up here, and I made this journaling page out of some paper, and I fussy cut this lady out. So she's peeking out the window. And that is this giant book. I believe I have 260 pages in here. I as I said, there's a ton of genuine ephemera, genuine antique and vintage textiles. There's no digitals in here. These are actual book pages and images. And you've seen me make many of these things because the whole series I did where I was inspired by, you saw me make all of these beautiful pieces by copying or doing my rendition of bits made by other junk journal makers. So, like I said, if this is something you're interested in bringing home, go take a look at my Etsy shop. The link is below. And thank you so much for joining me today. Let me know how you feel about this book. Is it too much? Is it too girly? Is it too lacy? Or is it just right? And I will close it back up by putting these snaps on. I'm going to turn my head over so I can see what I'm doing. Here we go. So that is my Shabby-Chic journal. Take care. We'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.